Fantastic. Well, what a pleasure it is to be with you. I know that we live in a world where I'm calling you from Portland, Oregon, which is was in flames just a few days ago, and had my bags packed to evacuate. Now there's smoke that is the most hazardous smoke in the world, and we also have the gift of COVID that has taken lives in our country. Totaling about almost 200,000 now, and 6.6 million who have been tested positive or have COVID. And now, why am I saying all that? Well, the context of which we are communicating with you is a small topic of innovation, but innovation in healthcare is particularly important at a time like this. And one has to understand that corporations who are the bedrock of our society in terms of hiring and growing our economy need a strong understanding of this skill and strong understanding of this ability to create not just an innovation action or innovation event, but a flywheel, and hence my presentation. I have with me a few members of our team, Caitlin Arps, who is actually doing the slides for me, and then who is also my director of innovation, and also Alexis Roloff, who is also joining the group. She is also a director of innovation. All three of us will engage with you as appropriate. Let me just say that what this irony of our innovation world is that many people speak, as you can see in the slide. Several people speak in tested situations. McKinsey, for one, has checked people's modus on innovation, and everyone's saying that they think their current business models are at risk. Everyone is saying that everyone, as in 84%, are saying that innovation is important and a growth strategy, and by the way, an overused term. And everyone is saying that they are extremely dependent on innovation. But as we look at the next slide, you will see that only 6% of executives are satisfied with what they're doing in innovation. So their aspiration versus execution are extremely different. 82% of organizations run innovation the same way they run the operating incremental performance gains that they expect from their very established legacy, shall I say, as well as business as usual environments. Now, one can ask the question, is there such a thing as business as usual anymore? And it's clear that there isn't any more business as usual, because look at me, I'm calling you from my home and you're listening from your home or from your office you temporarily visited. Now, 72% admit that they are missing opportunities. In other words, they're missing the window of opportunity and hitting the walls of innovation. Why is this distance not closed? What is it that can make us really feel comfortable in the innovation agenda? The next slide will cover some aspects of it, but I hope that you don't take it the wrong way. But we are living in a world of theater. Netflix is not the only place where we see drama and acting. We see it in innovation in companies as well. Now, we believe sometimes that we can just adopt the habits of innovation and therefore become innovators. We think that if we adopt the processes, we will then become that which we dream we become. So we have painted rooms with whiteboards that you can write. Sometimes you can even write on glass. We have brainstorming sessions with Post-it notes. I know my budget for Post-it notes has quadrupled since we started innovating. We adopt different kinds of dress codes because we think we can be entrepreneurial. We hire, we do petting zoos, excuse the term, but it is one where we bring entrepreneurs and companies that are entrepreneuring into larger institutions. We kind of view them in cages and hope that they will infect us with innovation modus and mores in the hopes that we can transform ourselves. We hire Zooglers, people from Google or anywhere else, or Facebook, the FANG companies, in hopes that they will infuse innovation. We also try to invest. We try to play, since some of us have dollars to spend, we invest in startups and accessing innovation that way, because we again hope that all of these elements working in concert, or some of these elements, will transform the way in which we view innovation as a larger institution. We start talking like a startup. We spend time defining stage gates. We draw some lines and we make innovation a process when it's actually a discipline. And we expect returns in an immediate way because we think that's how actions should be taken. All this means an expensive attempt at trying to find a recipe. The question is, what is that recipe for you? I don't judge any of these techniques. I think they're all valuable, but isolated by themselves, they're not. They don't serve anything but creating distance between you and the objective you want to serve. Let's move to the next slide where we're past the theater into some reality. Corporate approaches are clear. They create energy and research and development. They create incubators. They create accelerators. And the difference being the two we can describe in a few minutes. They create a venture arm that invests in startups or invest in emerging businesses, and they sometimes do acquisitions. And then, of course, M&A is the factor. These are all approaches, all valid, all having some element of truth. But the question is, what is the meal you want to cook as you start to build innovation within your own self, and let alone within the company that you serve? The next slide will cover some other factors. There are also some major paradoxes in the innovation culture. One is, what's your orientation towards discovery? Do you like to discover from within the company, or do you like to discover from outside the company? There are many companies that and enterprises that actually discount their own people, not in a negative way, but they think that the smart ones are outside. And so they tend to look outside for their orientation of innovation. That's a paradox because the energy has to be balanced between inside and outside. The comfort with new ideas. If someone comes to you and says, I got an idea, do you drop your pen and listen to them and engage them in a systematic way on how to take that idea forward if it's valid, or clarify? Or do you destroy it with 10 questions that are guaranteed to kill any good idea in the process? Now, we know that ideas fall on the sides of businesses on a regular basis. We know that those ideas are bottom up in many times, but idea out is very important. And what we do is we do top down and we do bottom up, and we forget the idea up, how ideas rise and how the ideas are a bloodstream of our own company, and how do we measure and create comfort in that ideas. I've written 2 articles in Forbes on that matter. If you want to check it out, it would be helpful to share from that point of view. What's your appetite for leaps, or is it incremental that is really important? Does your innovation agenda want incremental growth within your institution to prove value and then to make leaps the second value? Or is disruptive leaps not really in the picture, even though people say they are? That kind of paradox exists when it comes to funding and thoughts. What's your mode of experimentation? Do you like to experiment by creating markets, or do you like to experiment by creating how you feed a market? Do you experiment with a consistent optimization method, or do you use chaos as an approach? Do you say you want redundancy with a whole bunch of things you want to try and then integrate later, or do you want to make it right the first time? Those modes of experimentation is a mindset and a methodology in the culture of innovation that has to be understood before you start to take on an objective of this nature. And then, of course, the market focus. There are people who feed markets, and there are people who make markets and then feed them. Steve Jobs created markets. Others feed them. So what is your center of gravity in your company? Are you a feeder? Are you a market maker? Both are great. Both have value. And both habits have to be part of your vernacular. But the question is, where is your center of gravity initially? I hope these paradoxes don't confuse you, but allow you to think through exactly how you want your center of gravity and your signature for innovation in your company to engage. Now let's talk about some examples, if I may. Let's look at these 2 pictures. They're visualizations of where ideas form and how they spread. One on the left is a company and one on the right is a company. Notice that on the left, the company starts with a few center of gravities and then locks itself into patents and generates out. On the right, the company has sort of a scattergram of ideas, and they're all running independently and exist, and maybe there are certain hotspots. One is Apple and the other is Google. Both are fantastic, fast-growing, highly assertive companies that are transforming our world. Both have different ways in which they take ideas and express them. The signature is different, but the goals seem to be the same. So one has to understand exactly where your scattergram is and what you believe your philosophy is when you start to energize your company with an agenda on innovation. Beyond these examples, allow me to speak about my example. I am the Chief Innovation Officer and Senior Vice President of Cambia Health Solutions. We are about a $10 billion company. We have access to 70 million Americans through the Blue Cross Blue Shield network, which we own and operate 5 Blue Cross Blue Shield health plans within the space of the northwest of the country. We also have 20 other companies, of which 5 my team has launched, started, and created. The next picture will show you our not-for-profit model and how our not-for-profit model has a for-profit energy to it. There's always a view that a company that's a tax-paying not-for-profit can be slow and not activate, and this shows the trajectory of companies that we launched and built. Actually, we built and launched, but you get it. And the igniters that helped us create ideas within our organization, a number of ideas that we collect and conform. And it's a battle to give people currency and to have them believe in the currency of ideas, and that becomes a different bloodstream that then creates some of these companies. In fact, 3 of these companies were created by employees who became CEOs and general managers. So it kind of tells you that it's also a training ground for great leaders over the period of 10 years. Now, I've been the Chief Innovation Officer for the company for 10 years now. In fact, 10-year anniversary is right up here now. October will be my anniversary. Now, I'm either really bad at what I do and therefore they don't know what to do with me, or I think I know what I'm doing now after 10 years of practicing the art. At least I know how I'm doing it, but not how it can be done. But in that 10 years, I've had some lessons, I've had some understandings, and I hope we can share those at appropriate times in the course of this presentation, which I hope is quick and timely and forces questions for you to grow as well as for me to learn. So with that, let's move to the next slide. Now, what's the flywheel I keep talking about? Well, people say that you have to find a great idea, create it, and then show the world. Well, this flywheel doesn't say that. What it says is you have to find great people, and you have to find people with ideas. You have to show them the way of how they can be their best self, and then create from within the potential for innovation. Now, these flywheels usually are always about a process, and I'm all about people. I want you to understand that ideas without people are just ideas. They live and die the same half-life that everything else is. But people with ideas can transform the world we live in. And so the next slide will help sort of clarify some of that dialogue. You need to have an idea-generating engine that allows people to feel their currency in ideas, that they feel that it's their right and responsibility as employees to drop ideas and then to take them. Not just to give them in an elevator to somebody else who's smarter and then walk away and feel nourished by that action. That's how it early happened for me when I was Chief Innovation Officer. People thought, oh, he's going to be the Steve Jobs of the company, and he's going to take ideas, and he's just going to wear tight jeans and, you know, wear a black T-shirt, and everything will be fine. And what I tried very hard to do was to energize the institution so that it can go beyond me and beyond everyone else who is working for me to working with me, shall I say, to drive a cause greater than ourselves. That cause is the transformation of healthcare, the creation of it, the transformation of it to be catalyzed into a person-focused healthcare system that is sustainable economically, both at the person level as well as the institution level. And we have not reached that, and we owe that. And those of you who are all over the world probably recognize that we are merely problems within the diaspora of problems in healthcare across the world. And the idea engine has to wake up and make happen. The realization engine is where you can take an idea and make it real. So the word realization is double entendre, is to take an idea and make it realizable in the eyes of others, because sometimes people will tell you all the ways that it can be. The distribution at scale engine is one thing I keep learning about, because it's great to create a company, create 5 companies, but having it get to the customers, and we have about 2 million, but having them enjoy it, and the innovation throughput that a business needs to be able to take an idea, build an idea, define it, test it, and then deliver it, that throughput is still an issue within my company and within other companies. It's getting it out there quickly and being able to create scale so that you can impact lives as quickly as possible. And then finally, something that I think many don't think about, which is the renewal engine. What does it mean to take ideas and keep them fresh and renew them over and over again? I have ideas that have been 10 years old that are still in our archives, and we use them like old condiments when you make a meal and say, does this work? Is this salt still there? But surprisingly, when you refurbish these ideas and take them into a new format where the idea has met its time to be an idea that is implementable, is something that one has to understand when you create the engines of innovation within your company. Archiving on your right, distributing and scaling, realizing, which is the machinery to make something happen, and then the idea engine that sources it. Now, guess what? There are people who believe that innovation is the assembly of great inventions by other people. That's not a bad story. So you better be good at it, be able to take innovations and make it fundamentally strong. There are others who believe that you want to make everything. There are others who believe that's in between, somehow knowing how to assemble, knowing what the market offers, and knowing how to create your recipe. I'm of the belief that things that are core in the business, things that are going to be core in your business, have to be owned and operated and built. Things that are non-core, that you believe will be non-core in 10 years, you can borrow and you can build outside. The core ability to drive your philosophical view of how innovation should be expressed through humans in the human business is essentially the power of what the flywheel is about. And from that perspective, many launch into innovation exercises with their own footprint, and they step in the wrong thing in the process of doing it. So I suggest that we think about these 4 elements, we think about the system view of it, we consider the human element to it, because innovation is a value in my company. It produces value propositions, but it is still the basic right and privilege of all, not the ones who think they are smarter than others. With that, let me move to the next slide that I hope keeps time with us. I'm moving fast, and I hope that's okay with you. It is only to spur ideas so that we have more time to dialogue and engage. So what is the future for a Chief Innovation Officer? That's what CINO means. And I don't mean chief as a title. I mean it as a role. What does that role define now? And I think it's this next 10 years will be the 10 years of the role becoming a legitimate, even though off-balance sheet role, just like Chief Experience Officer or Chief Digital Officers. These chief roles sometimes are off-balance sheet, but guess what? They have impact to the balance sheet and to the income statement. And those impacts are pretty significant, because in every team, you have a team A and team B. In every corporation, you have a team A and team B. And having a team A do the operational work really well, you have to have a team B that has an equivalent structure to take leaps and new ideas and take them forward, because sometimes team A will forget to be able to define the markets they want to serve in the future, because they have to serve the existing markets in the most efficient, operationally tight way. And you can't argue when you're running an operation. And I ran the front end of Blue Cross Blue Shield for the Northwest for 2 years. And believe me, every time a consultant told me to think out of the box, I wanted to fire him or her. So sometimes you don't have time to do that. You have to activate on the present. Other times you need someone or something or some group that is spreading the idea of thinking ahead and planning and building ahead. Now, what does business reimagine means? Well, I think people figured that out with COVID. I wrote a book in 2010 on business transformation, and it predicted that we will have unknown unknowns attack us, and that we have to build a system within our corporate environment that can anticipate unknown unknowns. Now, logically, how can you anticipate unknown unknowns? Because once you know them, they become knowns. I know that some of you who are Socratic in the way you think will argue that it's not the case. But to be able to anticipate the competencies, the skills, the mindset, the values of your customers as they evolve so that you can reach them is the role of the Chief Innovation Officer and the role of people in innovation. So I used to build new markets and I used to focus on that. Now I build new competencies because I believe the company has to develop competencies that allow it to match new markets, because new markets without competencies is a failure. Of course, human-centered design is everybody's vernacular. It is a factor. I think there's too much going around. I think too many yellow stickies and too many pens have destroyed our ability to understand that human-centered design was brought to market many, many years ago. And I love IDEO and I love the team that has brought it to market, and Stanford has brought it to market. But realize that human-centered design is an art form that has been put into a process, but it is a philosophy that has lasted centuries. And we should bring those philosophic viewpoints to the art form and then take it to market in an effective way. And of course, the culture of an institution defines whether anything can grow. And if you don't work on the internal culture of the institution and affect that culture, then you cannot grow new ideas. So people who go out and buy companies, absorb them in, the companies fail and the people leave. Why? Because the soil within the company that they are acquired into does not grow the ability for diversity, for equity, and for inclusiveness. And so let's really think about the way in which we transform our institutions in a much more aggressive, assertive way than what has been lived before. And of course, digital transformation is the accelerator for being able to activate, but human transformation, arriving at digital transformation, is even more important because we cannot digitize our humanity towards the subjects we are trying to create solutions for. That's my story. I'm sticking to it. I hope this helps you. I hope it serves you in some way. You can connect with me, of course, in the usual manner. And there are writings that I have published that will be of help to you. And this helps me because it helps me learn from the questions you ask and helps me understand the choices one makes in growing one's thoughts in the area of innovation. So I hope this serves you. Jose, I hope the questions are coming. If they're not, then I failed you all, but I appreciate and value your time. And I'm going to ask Caitlin and Alexis if they want to participate in any of this. Since I've done it earlier than 35 minutes, I'm going to ask Alexis, who is my Director of Innovation and has been in the company for 20 years and experienced multiple jobs. Alexis, would you, are you on the line and able to be unmuted to give a perspective? You know, she didn't expect it to be called, so it's just me being naughty.
Yeah,
I
don't know if she has the ability to speak directly with us. I think no, she may. She just needs to unmute. She just needs to unmute herself. Alexis, you're self-muted right now, so if you unmute yourself, you should be able to speak.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to join and lend some perspective for what it's worth, and appreciate the lessons learned, certainly, and the color you give them, Mohan, from the last 10 years. I really appreciate, and then talking to other organizations as well, the power, because I think there is such, increasingly now with the economy, at least in the US, such a pressure to perform financially that there's a bias towards the operational. But even in that context, the power when you walk into the room and can share an employee story behind the idea of what motivated it and what they're trying to drive change within the industry, usually in service of others or even in service of teams inside the organization, can be a really powerful effect. So the importance of having those dual operating engines, even as times evolve, I think can't be understated.
Yeah, Alexis was my first teammate that I asked to join this innovation team after I was the Chief Marketing Officer and Executive for Blue Cross Blue Shield, and then when I walked in her office and I said, I'm going to build this thing, this group of 10 to 12 people, and we're going to define innovation for businesses, and I'm going to leave my role. Would you join me? She just stood up and took the job. So that kind of tells you the nature of the people we have in our team. Now, Alexis has been with me for 10 years now, but 17 years working in the institutions surrounding it. But Caitlin, on the other hand, if I can give you a few seconds, Caitlin joined just last month, or what, not month, was it 6 months ago? Caitlin joined, but she joined virtually. She could not enjoy the energy of the physicality of our relationships at the innovation team and innovation force. Caitlin, anything to add to what you've observed?
No, I think it's been great. I like to go all in and join a new job right in the midst of a pandemic, but hopefully that helped the post-it note bottom line, as you mentioned. But yeah, I think it's been great. I feel like this is a time when normally people feel extremely isolated from coworkers, family, friends, and sort of still attend a job virtually and feel energized and feel like every day is productive. You're not just, checking things off of your email, you're checking a list, but you're actually fixing a problem. You're fixing a consumer problem, and then in fact you're maybe helping an igniter, as Mohan talked about, the people within the business that have an idea, helping them realize and have that come to fruition. It's been a great honor to join the team, learn from the great brains every single day. So yeah, very interesting new employee startup, but it's been a blessing in disguise, absolutely.
Yeah, Caitlin just got posted into one of our sixth delivery that will come out this year. That is a unique proposition and competency that no one's seen yet. And she's just thrown right into it and doing a great job. Now, why did I include two of my teammates? The reason is the philosophy within Innovation Force, our innovation team, is that we never go into anywhere without our teammates. We are always two doing something. So there's no one in our group. And I know that sounds very politically correct, but this has been going on for 10 years, where we go into the challenge of innovation by having someone always be your six when you're looking at 12. And when we meet, we debrief after every meeting. We'll debrief after this meeting because we learn from each other. And so it's a mini MBA and a mini training course for everyone in our team to continually be better, and so that you can bring out the better in others. And that purpose of finding great ideas in great people and then enabling that does not take away from the fact that we as a team can activate, can build, can make great ideas. But the issue that's different is our ego is turned to passion and a cause greater than ourselves. And once we do that, we become our better selves. So that's what innovation to us means.